Hello Goobers, it's me, your favorite Goober, and I'm here to do that video where I talk about Project Fear. It's going to be a little bit of a longer one. I'm going to put just everything in here, all that I've got on my mind, kind of just keep it all in one place. It might be a little sporadic, there might be some, uh, you know, tangents, because I don't script my videos, I'm just going to be yapping. And, yeah, so without further ado, I'm going to get straight into it. What is Project Fear? Project Fear is one of the manga series that I am working on, one of two, and this one is set in a modern society, right? What you and I are familiar with living in day to day, right? We have set the story in a modern society, and what's different about this universe is that fear has the potential to manifest into a couple different things. So first, right, how does this work? I don't have all the details ironed out. There's still a lot of work to be done in terms of the nitty-gritty, but the rough idea is this. Somebody could be living their day, and let's say they're afraid of something. In this case, I've used this guy as an example every single time. Um, he's afraid of carpets. Really afraid of carpets. Really traumatic injury when he was a child that just led him to being afraid of carpets for his whole life. Mad rug burn. It was gnarly. All right, he's scarred for life. And for whatever reason, right, his girlfriend really wants to buy a carpet. She has no idea, right, that he's afraid of like rugs and carpets. So she's looking to do some decorating. They just moved into a new apartment together, and she has no idea about this fear. I really want to reiterate, she's not an evil person. She genuinely doesn't know. And so she wants to surprise him with the first location. She's like, all right, open your eyes. And he's caught in the middle of a rug store. This triggers his fear. And in this scenario, he can't control it. It gets triggered to the point where he ends up consumed. When you're consumed by your fear, you transform into a monster. The shape of this monster can be any number of things. It will be highly diverse, um, influenced by the personality and the fear itself, and maybe specific aspects of that fear, right? Why are you afraid of this thing? What part of it? And maybe that can be played into how the monster operates. And then the same goes for how the power of that monster operates. Do note that despite being consumed and transforming into a monster, you can still be saved. You are not gone. You can still be brought back to your senses, de-transformed from a monstrous state. In this universe, naturally, these monsters have happened enough that over the course of history, a well-established and historied uh, organization would form. I've dubbed them the therapists. It's their job to save these people from the monstrous selves. And I dubbed the monsters irrationals. That's what they're called. And so the therapists, they go and their approach to saving these people is to spare their life. And they try their best to save you from that monstrous state. However, right, one little bit of lore I have in mind is that the therapists unfortunately let one monster go a little too far and ended up getting. I haven't really decided how many people die, but there's going to be a handful of deaths caused by the mercy granted to the monster from the therapists, and that sparked the uh, fires for a new kind of underground organization. And I could really make a better name for them. I'll probably just give them a unique name, but I call them the Mercenaries. Not mercenaries, but mercenaries. And their main goal is, God, they really need a better name. Their main goal is simple. They want to protect the peace, they want to protect the people, but their approach is to just kill the monster, which kills the person. That way you can sacrifice one life and potentially save 10 more. Because you don't want to risk that monster hurting or destroying things and causing all sorts of problems. So you just go out and you kill it. You end the problem. Now, these two organizations are opposed to one another. One wants to protect everybody to a fault, and the other wants to just find the quickest solution that helps the most people, which is just to kill the monster, right? To kill the irrationals. And that's kind of like the rough idea for this series. Now, when it comes to the therapists and the other group, there's another side to this fear power. There is the ability to control your fear and use it to empower yourself, right? So let's say take the carpet guy. In this case, the therapists, they save him. They scout his fear as being something with a lot of potential. They invite him to train his fear to hopefully become somebody that can protect others. And now he's working to control his fear and use it to his advantage. Instead of being consumed by it, he can revel in it and use it to empower himself. Now, I like to think of a good example being Ichigo and his Hollow Mask, where you can use it to empower yourself, but if you lose control, then, I like to say you become a gray piece on a black and white chessboard. You're everybody's enemy. You're nobody's friend, right? Um, and so you want to control that. You obviously don't want to become that gray chess piece. You can learn. You can practice. And one thing I wanted to do was figure out a way to avoid really common fears. So I've got two things I really want to discuss. One thing is um, the visuals on how the powers represent for the people when you're like controlling your fear. What does that look like versus turning into a monster? Um, I have an update for what I want to try to do for the people side of it of controlling the fear, and then I want to talk about one detail that I had going into the original concept for this series. So the original idea was a bit misinformed on my end. I wanted irrational fears. And what an irrational fear actually is a fear that you have despite not being in any danger or little to no danger. That is considered an irrational fear because you're just not in danger. My initial understanding of irrational fears was very incorrect. I was misinformed, or I guess I misunderstood, because what I thought was that irrational fears were more personal, kind of random fears. And the reason that was important to me was because I wanted to have a series where a lot of random fears kind of pop up, where people are afraid of, I don't know, trash cans, or people are afraid of umbrellas, or people are afraid of, something as silly as carpets, right? Like I've said with the other guy. I wanted really silly things, really personal fears, and I hadn't found an explanation to sidestep the really common fears. And I mentioned this one time, and I had a commenter who pointed out an interesting idea to where maybe, there's a society that understands that fear is like this, and so perhaps they do some counseling to prevent these common fears from manifesting. And I liked the idea when I first heard it, but I knew I didn't necessarily want to go full throttle with that idea. And what's funny too is I had a concept in mind that was the opposite, where you had this organization, underground lab experiments on like children trying to engineer really powerful fears. And I had to laugh at myself because I didn't take the inverse of that, of trying to like de-engineer fears out of people. And so I don't know. I thought that was funny. I wanted to point that out. But if you can engineer like a fear of time, could you imagine? Right. Anyways, common fears. I found a solution. Now it's a rough idea. I haven't put, that much thought into it. It's a newer concept. And what it is this. Really common fears would be channeled through more people, meaning its power would be spread across so many people that to be consumed by that fear, you would have to be extremely top 0.01% of people afraid of that thing, right? Take, for example, fear of the darkness. You'd have to be really, 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 really afraid of the dark to even potentially get consumed by that fear because its power is spread throughout so many people that it can't just easily direct itself into one person and consume them. And so that to me works. It still lets me use the really common fears if I want to have a couple of them, right? Maybe there's some fear of snakes or some fear of heights or a fear of the ocean, right? It would make sense that a couple of people would be that like top 0.01% afraid of these things. And so it means that yes, these fears are common, but it's really, really uncommon for someone to be so afraid that they even have the opportunity to be consumed by it. But this works on the inverse, which means the really, really unique personal fears, like the carpet one, and for the main character, she's afraid of the moon. So these really unique fears that like maybe 5 people in the whole world would have for like each of them. If you were afraid of the carpet, of the moon, right? That's a lot of energy being channeled into very, very few people, which makes it a lot easier for somebody to be consumed by that fear, assuming they are afraid enough of said thing, right? And so I was really happy with that solution. It still let me use the popular fears, but it made it really rare, and it gave an excuse for the way I wanted to write this series, which was to have a bunch of silly personal fears, and it gave a perfect explanation as to why those might be manifesting more commonly within the story and be more powerful. And so that was my solution to the common fears issue that I was having, and while it's a newer idea, I haven't necessarily fleshed it out. I really, really like what I have there. So I'm very happy with that. I'm probably going to run with it, to be honest with you. But the next thing I wanted to mention that I had come up with was in regards to how the power manifests for when you're controlling your fear. Now, I had some early ideas, but I wanted to use something that was unique across like everybody. I didn't want to have like, to take Bleach again as an example, I didn't want to have a situation where all the Soul Reapers look the same. Their Zanpakutos, when they're in their Shikai form, like, are all basically just swords. There's some variation, yes, but for the most part, they're all just swords that look very similar. And it's when they enter their Bankai that the swords manifest their cool looking powers, their different unique looks in general and such. But they're all just swords. Nothing wrong with it. Bleach is really cool. The character designs are cool and whatnot. Like I enjoy Bleach. It's been a while since I've seen it. I look forward to rewatching it when the final episode of the current arc comes out. I've been waiting. Just I don't know. I wanted to mention that my patience. I'm very proud of it. I told myself I'd wait for a Thousand Year Blood War arc to fully release before I watched it, and so far so good. I look forward to. I think it's the final part. I don't know, but I look forward to rewatching the series and getting to enjoy it finish, from start to finish. But yeah, heavily recommend it. It's been a while since I've seen it, but you can skip the filler. But I think it's a good series. Definitely check it out. But moving on, right? I wanted to have something that was unique, that had every character kind of stand out. And one thing I really liked from a series that I have recently become obsessed with, I'll admit I'm an anime only, but doesn't matter. I can still call myself a big fan of this series, is Gachi Yakuta. Absolutely adore that series. It is my favorite, hands down. And one thing that I really enjoyed was the diversity of the vital instruments. And I just really enjoyed how everybody kind of had a unique object for themselves and whatnot. I believe the diversity was really cool. And I wanted to take inspiration from Vital Instruments and kind of have something similar where every fear for every person, if they were in their monster form, which means they got consumed, right? Um, they would be designed in a certain way. There would be, like I mentioned, right? Their personality, their fear, and why they're afraid of that fear would play into the monster's design and how the power manifests. Well, I want to take a similar approach with how that fear would manifest um, with that person when they're controlling it. So I don't really know how to describe it yet, but I have an idea in my mind. I'll have to figure out a way to describe it, but I'm toying with different ways for that fear to manifest and show physically. And then to take that and somehow bring it to the character's outfit design. I don't know what I want to do 100% in that regard. Um, a part of me wants to just kind of have some unique designs where it's like they're powered up, they're not powered up, they're going to look two different ways. Or maybe they just look one way when they're powered up, they're using a special object that, is a manifestation of their fear. I don't quite know yet, but I will admit, truthfully, I am leaning more towards having a unique outfit for when they are empowered, just because I think it'd be cool. And being cool is fun, and fun is easier to work with. Just how it is. When you're having fun, it's much easier to do the work. But yeah, that's kind of just there's a rough idea there. There's a lot more work that needs to be done with that concept, I wholly admit. But yeah, that's that. I don't have much more to say. Kind of went over everything. There's a lot that I look forward to coming up with, especially all the different powers and trying to figure out how I want to approach these designs. And then from there, after I've got the systems organized, it's going to be more story that I'm developing. And that's when I'm going to be really vague. I'm not going to spoil story bits. It's why for Project Elemental, I haven't really talked about it because any development is usually story development. I don't want to spoil it. So, yeah. I probably will work on the main character. I'm trying to understand what I want to do with her a little more and how I want to make her power work. Because I know she's afraid of the moon, but I don't really know how I want to use that as a way to have a power. So I will have to figure something out there. But for now, it's kind of everything. So with that being said, good night. Well, actually, it's the afternoon, so good evening and good luck. Bye-bye.